Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Um, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Howie, please just drop in the chat your name. How's the weather where you are today? Is it so hot? So hot, sunny Friday afternoon. I Alua Tochiku. Yes, the heat. Yeah, Abuja weather. I see you, Kesina. It seems like the heat is all over. We're all feeling it. I hope we're keeping hydrated. I hope we're keeping, you know, yeah, we're drinking water just so we're staying hydrated because the heat can be a lot. But for everyone joining, good afternoon. We're just asking, how's the weather like where you're at? See, all across Nigeria. I can see reports from Jalingo, Gusau, Zaria. Seems like the heat is all over. But please stay hydrated and protect yourself from this heat because sometimes the heat can be quite frustrating. Yes, as well. But welcome once again. Welcome, Emanuela. How are you doing? How's the weather where you are? Welcome, goodness, God's kindness. Welcome. I see it's sunny in Kaduna. Kaduna, Gombe State. It's hot over there. Wow. Sunny over in Akwa Ibom. Akwa Ibom, it's welcome, Dorcas. Welcome, Mimunat. Oliver, Samuel. I see you. I see you. I see you. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. Okay. So we're asking people, how's the weather where you are this afternoon? I see it's hot all over. Everywhere is hot. Everywhere is hot. I hope right now you're not in the heat while you're taking this session, right? I hope you have a bottle of cold water, a cold drink next to you, to get you through this session. I hope you're also keeping warm. Somebody says this weather free cooked beans. Oh, wow, it is that hot where you are. Okay, very very sunny, but please grab a bottle of cold water, a bottle of chilled Coke, chilled Fanta, something to keep you, hydrated throughout this session. Please, please, please. Um, yes. So, for everyone joining, good afternoon once again. My name is Bashir Omar, program officer here at Leap Africa, one of your course administrators. And the question is, how's the weather where you are? Most people are complaining about the heat. It's quite hot. Uh, Oluwaseun Moses, my brother, no cash to get chilled water. try. I'm pretty sure maybe the person around you takes transfer as well. Ask them. I know the cash situation is pretty serious. But I hope we're getting by as well, even with this lack of cash around us. But good afternoon. Wow. Oh, Chisom Ibe says the weather is cool. That's interesting. Please, where are you? Share with us so we can know whether to port to wherever you are, because all over it's quite hot. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Good afternoon. I see we're joined. We have people from Akure, Ogun State, Zamfara, Akwa Ibom, Kaduna State. Wow, the representation here is just incredible to see. Greetings. We have people from Lagos, Adamawa State, I see Yola, or Plateau State, or your state, Lautech, Benin, Bauchi, Abuja. Wow. Everyone is well done. It's good to have you on the call today. Good afternoon. Wow. Okay. Good afternoon, Julius. Good afternoon, Faith. Good afternoon from Enugu, Coast City. Good afternoon. Ilorin. There are people from Ilorin here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The time is 5 minutes past 2, and sorry. Yes. Time is 5 minutes past 3. Apologies. And my name is Bashir Omar. I'm a programs officer here at Leap Africa. I'm also one of your course administrators on the Youth Leadership Development Program. It's good to be here. I've been interacting with most of you on the Telegram group, and yes, it's good. It's good to be here. So I would we'll do a little bit of of an icebreaker to start off our session today. Today's session is the theme is from social media campaign to real time. But before we start and before we start today's proceedings, I will be dropping a link on the chat. It's on Mentimeter. Just let us know how you are feeling. The link has been dropped. Let us know how you're feeling about the upcoming elections. I will be sharing my screen as well, and so we can monitor the real time responses as well. We can see responses on there as well on the screen. Somebody is saying they're feeling hopeful. How are you feeling about the upcoming elections? Unmotivated. Wow. We have the gubernatorial elections and the state assembly elections coming up in our various states. I hope we'll be going out to vote, exercise our civic responsibilities this weekend, voting to power the people who want to serve us for the next 4 years and maybe the next 8 years as well. Uninterested, anxious, scared. I mean, it's a pretty anxious period as well. Still positive. I like that. I think we should still be positive and optimistic, and just believe our voice matters. Go out there in masses and vote for the candidate that we believe will best serve our interest as well in our states. Indifferent. Wow, indifferent. Indifferent. Why indifferent? I think we should try, go out there and vote for the right candidate that we believe serves our best interest or aligns with our values. So please, for those of us that are not uninterested, for those of us that are indifferent, I would just like to plead with you, please, try and see the positive angle. Remember, whoever is going to be there will serve you for the next 4 years, and it will be good for your voice and your vote is, very, very powerful wherever you are. Where we have some of us in Akwa Ibom, some of us in Lagos, some of us in Adamawa, wherever you are. And please, most importantly, please remember to stay safe as you go out to vote this weekend, right? Cooperate with security officials, right? Just a few tips. Once you see things aren't going too well around your polling units, maybe just move away from those conflict zones as well. I see people are scared. I mean, we're living in interesting times in this country, so there's that bit of uncertainty. But please, I will implore you to just stay the course. Stay the course. Change makers. We do believe in you. So thank you so much. I see all your answers. Thank you so much. Yes, it's good to see. So I will just stop sharing. It's good to see your comments on the chat as well. And please, as we go out this weekend, please stay safe. Stay safe, and remember, as we exercise our civic duties, your vote is very powerful as well, and do the right thing. So with me today on the call, I have our course administrators. I have with me Tor Jessidine Odede. I have Joy Amanabo. I have also behind Leap Africa, very own IT, Teresa. And the lady on the screen right now, we have Kathleen Usari, who will be taking over from me and would introduce our guest today. Hello, Kathleen. Good to see you this afternoon. How's the weather where you are? Is it also hot? Are you feeling the heat like everybody else? And how are you feeling about the upcoming elections before you take us, into full swing with the session today? And once again, my name is Bashiroma, and I'll be your moderator today. Good afternoon.
All right, thank you, Bashir. Good afternoon. It's good to be here. Thank you for that nice introduction, and thank you for introducing the whole team, because it takes a village to work with 5,000 amazing, inspiring young undergraduates across several tertiary institutions like we have on the program. We're also joined by Esther Balogu, who is our interpreter extraordinaire, just making sure that our persons with disabilities community are able to follow through on the session. It's good to be here. And without wasting too much time, I have a special guest to share with you today. So just sit back. If you haven't gotten water, stand up quickly and get some water, get your notepads out, because we're here to hear from a true change maker. You know how on social media, we all say we don't like things, but sometimes we just tweet about it and forget about it. We'll just keep our words for the moment. But this person has actually taken the time to go from tweeting on social media to making sure that action and social change actually happens. So I'm here to welcome Ebenezer Wikina. Ebenezer is the founder of Policy Shapers. He's also a campaign strategist at Change.org, and that foundation helps citizens build social movements, reaching over 3 million users in Nigeria. He has 13 years of experience working with more than 30 organizations across multiple sectors. When I say we're in the presence of greatness, I am not lying. He is the founder of Policy Shapers, a youth-led community that empowers young people with knowledge, skills, and tools they need to engage with public policy. Mr. Ebenezer Wikina is a World Economic Forum expert. He is a senior category judge of the Queen's Commonwealth Essay Competition, which is the world's oldest international writing competition for schools. He's also a trustee of the Sickle Cell Awareness and Health Foundation. He's a pioneer member of British Council's UK Youth Advisory Board. He's a founding member of the Open Government Youth Collective. He's also currently leading the IELTS. Okay, I'm seeing certain comments in the chat. Please let me know if you can see me. I can see the screen from this end.
Yes, we can see you, Catherine. Please proceed.
Okay, all right. Just saw some chats. All right. Like I said, he is currently leading the Reform IELTS campaign. He's seeking policy reform to the English language test requirements by the UK government, which could save Nigeria up to 5 billion naira annually. So far, He's the reason why across 20 schools internationally, you do not have to write IELTS just to qualify as an English speaker. Please join me as we welcome Ebenezer Wakina. Ebenezer, we're so glad to have you. We're excited just to make your acquaintance and to listen to you and to learn from you on how you were able to turn from just being a normal keypad warrior to really bringing about social change. Over to you. It's good to have you. Let's welcome Ebenezer in the chat.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Can you guys hear me?
Clearly, we can hear you.
Okay. Unlike everyone else, where it's hot where you are, it's raining here. Surprisingly, it just started raining. I'm in Port Harcourt currently. In River State, so it's raining. So just in case my internet begins to break, just let me know so I can. I have backup. I have backup Airtel and backup MTN. So just let me know. So thanks everyone. It's really a pleasure. I can see all the comments in the chat section. I'll just quickly share my screen. Just give me a second. Yeah, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Amazing. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks Catherine as well for the introduction. So I was speaking quickly on from social media campaigns to real-time change. I'll talk a bit about social movements in Nigeria, the history of social movements, and what young people have done in the past, what we've done currently, and the potential that we have, to bring change to this country, especially as it relates to translating conversations online and the wishes and thoughts of people online to actual change and advocacy. So that's what I was speaking about quickly. Okay, so let's get into it. So for many young people, right, NSAS, especially those in Generation Z, maybe early 20s, mid 20s, NSAS was like one of the first times that young people were introduced to the art of social justice campaigning, right? So the first time people saw that people could come out, agree on something. In this case, social media was a way that we were able to galvanize ourselves and came out to the streets to make their wishes known. However, so the art of social campaigning and campaigning generally in Nigeria, whether in the form of protests or revolts, actually goes way back. It goes back to the 1920s. And it would interest you to know that the very first group of people who actually started campaigning in Nigeria are actually women, and that's why this, if you're my acquaintance or my connection on LinkedIn, you see I've been advocating for the fact that we need female presidents. Women have always been at the forefront of almost every kind of change in Nigeria. And from the social justice lens, the About Women's Riots, in 1929 was one of the first times when, this was during the colonial era, when people came together, and in this case, women, and they were able to speak about an issue with a collective voice. And even when they had guns facing them, they were still able to resist. And sadly, maybe many of them were killed in the process of that revolt. But they were able to make their voices heard on an issue around taxation. I mean, the colonial government was taxing citizens really high. And they just thought that they needed to do something about that, right? Also in the same vein, the Abeokuta Women's Revolt, which was led by Funmilayo Ransome Kuti. The funny story is, whenever we hear Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, everyone just thinks, who is the first woman to drive a car in Nigeria? Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, I think is a huge disservice that we just know her for driving cars, because she actually is a very huge figure in social movements in Nigeria. She led the Abeokuta Women's Revolt. 10,000 women were able to gather, again, around taxation issues where the colonial governments, again, supported by the local king at the time in Egbaland, and they were able to lead that protest. They were there for days on end, insisting that the tax be reduced. But in addition to the tax, they even wanted the king to be changed because they actually didn't believe in him. They didn't think he protected the rights of the villagers. And long story short, I mean, she was even arrested. She was charged, I think, close to £3,000. £3,000 back then was a lot of money, right? And she went through a lot of things. She was singled out and she went through a lot of things. But the good story is that eventually, in the end, they were able to change that. And the king, for one of the first times in the colonial era, a king actually had to leave his position because of the pressure from the women. So you can see that it's not a new thing. They might not have had social media, but they had guts, right? They had guts. They had they had belief in themselves, and they were able to walk in and make their voices heard. The anti-SAP revolt, which was led by students, funny enough, in 1989, was pretty much something that the Nigerian Association of Nigerians, National Association of Nigerian Students, rather, were able to lead without social media, again, without any form of easy technology, way to coordinate people. They pretty much just used the SUG meetings and flyers and handbills and posters to gather themselves and made that happen. Again, sadly, it was a physical process. So and it's almost like in Nigeria, sadly, we've had this ugly trend where every or most social movements that bring people together, and it becomes a huge movement, and there are many people, it usually ends with them shooting somebody or killing somebody or arresting somebody, and that's a very sad thing. And I hope that that's something that even as the current administration comes in or the new administrations come in, that's something that they actually need to do, because the civic space in Nigeria is really, really threatened, right? I mean, we saw what happened with NSAS and all of the denying and gaslighting that followed that. So same thing happened here, with the SAP's Structural Adjustment Program, which was a program under Babangida's time. So I mean, the program was by the IMF that pretty much was giving the students themselves was giving Babangida and the national leaders a chance to hide money abroad. It was in 1989, and I mean the good part is that students were able to lead that. And in fact, for most of the revolts against the military governments, especially times when the military had overstepped their boundaries, it was students who were able to, various SUG units across various tertiary institutions who were able to come stand out. Young people stood against the military. Sadly, many of them were even killed, but they always kept speaking until the change happened. So the democracy that we enjoy in large parts actually goes back to the effort that students, women have actually put in. So when people say women and young people are marginalized, if you look at Nigeria's history, women and young people have actually been leading so many things for a very long time. And it's very key that we understand this history and know that we actually stand on the shoulders of great people who have done great things. And we don't have any excuse, to not be able to drive change in our own generation. Okay, so I try to put this in like a timeline just to show you what communication must have been like in their own time. So the 1929, that was just after they invented radio. Billy Graham had, it's Billy Graham, no, not Billy Graham, Billy Graham is the pastor. Something Graham, I can't remember his first name now, but he had invented the telephone. And because communication had started to grow at its infant stages, you had radio, you had telephone, but it wasn't even in Nigeria at the time. So most of what happened for the Aba Women's Riot, from what I read, shows that women were just like using market conversations, neighborhood conversations to organize themselves. And, despite how limiting that was, they were able to come in hundreds and thousands for that particular revolt. For the Abeokuta Women's Revolt, it was 1947, not too far from the Aba Women's Riots, similar thing. I mean, imagine how you're able to gather 10,000 women to come with cutlery, come with stuff. They were cooking, sitting down in front of the palace, just waiting and asking for change to happen, and they were able to do that without social media, right? So I feel like we underestimate what we have and the kind of power that we have, with technology at our fingertips, the fact that we can all join this call and have a conversation. As far back as the Aba Women's Riot, they couldn't even imagine that, right? So think of the fact that we do have an advantage in our generation. And as technology continues to expand, when there are things like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, etc., all of these tools, we're supposed to keep thinking of ways where we can reinvent ourselves and use them to further our causes and further our advocacy work. So I just thought to add that just to challenge us. So what's the social movement? So I think it's good to just start from the basics quickly. A social movement is a loosely organized but sustained campaign or sustained campaigns in support of a social goal, typically either the implementation of a particular thing, so we want to ask for them to implement something, or to prevent them from implementing something, right? So usually it's loosely organized, it's sustained, and these are campaigns that continue to go on for a particular period of time. It's not just a one-off thing where you start it for one day, it doesn't work, everybody goes home. It's something that people are able to keep going for a while until they see the change that they are looking for. I think a good analogy, because sometimes as an individual, I struggle with definitions sometimes, but I think I like metaphors, right? A good metaphor for social movements is a wildfire. If you've seen a wildfire before, a wildfire usually, I mean, the cases of wildfire outbreaks in Australia, Brazil, especially in the Amazon, is usually like a terrible thing, but it starts with a spark, right? So it could either be lightning, it could either be someone threw a cigarette somewhere, or some small contained burning that became bigger and then engulf the entire forest. But it needs a spark. In a social movement lens, a spark could be a person's experience, a person's story, an event, a news story, a documentary. In the case of Sex for Grace, which we'll talk about later, Sex for Grace was the documentary, and then led to the conversation, and then became a movement, and then led to policy change, right? So it could be anything, but something usually sparks that, right? Also, a wildfire needs fuel, and fuel could be fueling for a wildfire could be trees, dry leaves, etc. In our own social movement case, fuel will be eager people, who are ready to spread the message, people who, as you say, they are boiling, they're upset, they're like, yes, let us go and do this. I agree with you. We should do something about this, and they're willing to follow you to spread that movement. And finally, wildfires cannot really be owned or fully controlled. Most times when we've seen cases where people have tried to own on social movements, again, owning in the sense that you're trying to control every aspect of it, and you want all of the credits for it, it ends up consuming the person even. And there are so many examples. NSAS is one of the examples. Most of you might know Segalink, who have done tremendous work on, releasing young people who have been arrested illegally. For 3-4 years, he was doing that, right? Unannounced, without much happening. But when it moved from just being a single campaign or single effort to becoming something bigger, became a movement, and the feminist coalition got involved and were able to rally people. Maybe he started to feel like he was left behind, right? And maybe he started to feel like he went to own it. I'm not sure, right? But the moment you start feeling like you want to own something, you're pretty much losing the core message. And in the end, it now became as if he was fighting the same NSAS that he had been working, to advocate for a very long time. So it really cannot be owned. I know that this is one challenge that we often see in the development space, where people are trying to own things for themselves because of personal accolades. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having personal accolades, nothing wrong with starting something. But you, as you see in the lessons we'll share soon, you should be willing to share. You should be willing to share the movement, share the risk, share the work, share the accolades, share everything, so that, because the movement is bigger than you, and if you don't make it bigger than you, it might remain a simple campaign that just comes up for a short time and goes away. So as I speak forward, you'll see some of the more examples that I'm going to share. So finally, just on social movements, there are different stages for social movements. First, it emerges, then it coalesces. Coalescing is like when people begin to share. So let's say emerge by someone just saying, oh, I don't like this thing, this is wrong. Why are the traffic lights not working in Lagos or in Port Harcourt? And then someone else shares on social media and says, oh, very, very true. Or they call in on radio and say, oh, very true, I lost somebody because of this, etc. And then people begin to share. So the coalescing phase is like when people are beginning to come on, they are mixing experiences, people are sharing stories, people are sharing their thoughts about the particular movement and the maybe it's not movement yet, but like the campaign and the particular issue that the person is talking about. And then it begins to bureaucratize, right? So at this phase, it's getting some bit of structure. So we're now beginning to say, okay, this person is the one that started the conversation. This is what we're going to do. Maybe we need to have a hashtag. Maybe we need to have a petition. Maybe we need to, do those kind of things. Maybe we need to ask media to talk about it. And then you begin to get some kind of structure in it. I mean, movements don't usually have like an organizational structure, right? Because they come with different people with different opinions, different thoughts. However, they have some bit of loose structure that helps to control things so that it doesn't just go out of hand. And then once it bureaucratizes, 5 of these things could either happen. It bureaucratizes, then becomes a success because it has some bit of structure. People work together on stuff. Different organizations can come together and work on a movement. It gets success and then it declines, or it fails and it declines. Or there's co-option. Co-option is often when there was a movement I was part of in our state, in River State, I'll talk about it shortly, where we advocated for something, did a lot of work on it, pushed it forward. had a physical protest on it. And the government just called the leaders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't know what they went for, some kind of meeting. A few days later, people are leaving the WhatsApp group, everything is crumbling and everything. So co-opting is when you notice that people in power try to buy the leadership. There was times during NSAS when they said, oh, we want to meet with social person. Everyone said, no, meet with all of us. We don't want you to meet with any single person, right? So because there's a history of where the government has tried to co-opt people, and it's not even just the government, really. I mean, even private organizations, whenever people in power feel like they are threatened, when they feel they can't fight the movement, they try to co-opt the leaders, and as a way they feel like that's a way to stop things. And then there's repression, which is the sad one, where they come with guns and shoot people, try to scatter people away, attack certain people, kill certain people, which is often the sad part. And that way the movement ends and then declines, or the movement even goes mainstream. And to go mainstream, it loses its core focus. Like for example, again, this also the mirrors of this during NSAS. So during NSAS, the idea was NSAS, but then people said they end the government, end this, end that. So there were so many other conversations that now started to come on. And it was so we're lucky that it didn't go mainstream too far, because or maybe even did go mainstream somehow, because some people then started to loot some places, attack some people, so it sort of went away sort of from it. So I think that if you're not able to bureaucratize very well, and again, NSAS was a peculiar case because there wasn't a single organization and there were so many voices. But if you're not able to bureaucratize very well, you get to the point where there are so many messages in one, and everything just goes haywire, right? So it eventually declines, but it depends on what happens before it declines. And the goal often is to make sure that it becomes a success before it declines. Okay, I'll move a bit faster now. So these are some contemporary case studies of social movements in our present time. And we can look at them from this lens of what we just saw as the stages of social movement, right? The Not Too Young to Run movements, which I think is one of the most successful movements in our generation, right? For young people that are able to ask for the glass ceiling to first be removed. I know people have often said, oh, you say you're not young to run, but you don't have the money to run, you don't have the X to run. No, that was not what the campaign said. The campaign was trying to say, first of all, make it possible that a young person can even run for office. If they are young enough to vote, they should be young enough to be voted for, right? And that was the goal of the campaign. Again, it had a central organization that was running that, which was YAGA, but there were many other organizations that came together, like Code, and other organizations were able to come together to form that coalition. And then they had states, so they were able to bureaucratize. And then we had states representatives, state champions, people engaging the House of Assemblies in various states, and all of that put together became a concerted movement that then became, the bill, and then the bill to the act with all of the pressure. However, what people don't realize is that it just didn't start from one day just saying, let's do Not Too Young to Run. He actually there for many years of, YAGA, at the point where it emerged, YAGA will be doing all these things where they are doing the youth manifesto, they'll do, what are the youth's goals for the elections? They done so much work around the election. So it was like a thing that came almost 9 years in the making, And so sometimes what people don't realize is, before something becomes a movement, sometimes it doesn't start very fast. It doesn't just wake up one morning and it's a huge movement. A lot of time, effort, energy, goes into it to first build a conversation around it and build allies. But then eventually everyone just starts acting, and then it becomes huge, and it can then have a higher chance of becoming a change driver. NSAS, I don't need to talk so much about NSAS. We know about NSAS. Sex for Grace, I mentioned this earlier. The spark was that BBC documentary that Kiki Modi did, and he went viral. Conversations came up, people started sharing their own experiences, and then he went on to the National Assembly. A particular member decided to sponsor a bill. Then, of course, there was the bill signed and approved. Bring Back Our Girls as well. I don't need to talk too much about this as well, because most of us might know about Bring Back Our Girls. Bring Back Our Girls, a similar thing, but one of the biggest lessons from Bring Back Our Girls is the lesson of resilience. The fact that there are people who actually are still advocating for that issue up until today. This is 8-9 years plus after, So it shows you, I mean, people talk about our generation a lot, and I'm saying because I feel like I'm a young person like all of us, right? So people talk about our generation a lot and say that, we're like the quick generation, we want things very fast, want to just get things done and move on. But I think that when it comes to like building movements and trying to cause change by working with other people, you need to be able to stay on it for a while, because you need to keep working on it together. You need to keep talking about it. Even when everyone has forgotten it, I might have moved on to something else. Even when media that covered it maybe 2 months ago is talking about something else, you need to keep talking about it. You need to keep talking about it every day until you see the change that you want to see. So I think that that's one lesson that we learned from Aisha, Yusufu, obviously, Christine, all of them who were able to keep pushing it every day, and even those who are still talking about it up until today. Stop the suit again. This is the one I was talking about earlier, where there was some bit of corruption. This was because of so I was opportunity to work on this with a couple of people because of the air pollution issues we have in River State, and not just in River State, across the Niger Delta region. There have been years of gas flaring. There's illegal.
Hello, Ebenezer. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. We left some messages for you in the chat. Just wanted to call your attention to them. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. So like you have like all you have bunkering and all of these things that have caused and led to a lot of air pollution. And so to stop the suit campaign, the idea was that we wanted to find ways where the government can get involved. The major win for the campaign was that we were able to get the United Nations Environment Program to come down to River States, UN Environment. They did a study about it. It became a lot more bigger, because at the time when it happened, the government didn't really care about it, because I'm sure most of them had access to like the best healthcare and they feel like they could fly out at any time. But the citizens were the ones that were suffering that. So you spread your things outside, you spread a singlet outside and it's white. In the evening it's almost black because there's like spots all over it and everything. So that was one of the campaigns. But the lesson from this particular campaign is just that sometimes it takes a person to speak, because like the people who were speaking about this when it began, it was just a couple of us who just thought that we wanted to do something about it, right? And sometimes you might look like you're crazy for even talking about it, because everyone will say, that's an issue that is not possible to change. Many people actually will tell you about things that are not possible, right? So only people will tell you that, okay, this thing is possible, let us even try. So you hear a lot of that, this is not possible, this is difficult and stuff like that. But true stuff is, so we're able to just start talking about it, and that's inspired other people to come on, right? So these are just a few contemporary examples, and if you put them on this part, you'll see that quite a number of them, they emerge, coalesce, bureaucratize, they either became success, became failure, etc., corruption, repression, etc. So you can see that these are the stages that the movement goes through, and it helps you to know where you are at each time, because like no movement can last forever. There'll be different kinds of movements on a particular issue. For example, Martin Luther King had the Civil Rights March, on racism, how Black people are being treated in the US. It was the same issue, but that movement ended because then there was the Black Lives Matter movement, which was a similar movement, but it was a different thing altogether, talking about around the same issues. But then the spark was when George Floyd was killed, and then conversations came up. So there'll always be a decline at some point, because you can't talk about one thing forever, no matter how long you actually keep on it. So that's why it's good that you're able to know where you are and plan, so that your chances of success are actually higher. And that's what we want to talk about now. How can you make your chances of success higher even as you do your work? So sorry to those that I'm speaking quite fast. Sometimes I speak very fast when I get passionate. So I'm going to slow myself down. When I start getting fast again, feel free to tell me to slow down. So let us go into this now. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to find a way to move this question. Can you guys see my screen? Can you guys see the question?
Yes, we can. Just a timeline though, not a question. January 20, 2020.
Okay, all right. Okay, so how did the Reform IELTS campaign start? And I think this is the question that most people have asked over and over. I've had a chance to share in a couple of forums, but most people do not really know how the campaign began and what led to the change we've achieved so far, and most of what we're hoping we'll be able to achieve in coming months. So this is where the whole story began. It was January 28th, 2020. This was just before COVID struck. So I'd applied for, as part of my resolutions for 2020, I personally applied to do a business program at Nexford University. Nexford just came into Nigeria a couple of months before then. So they're just starting their Nigeria office and stuff like that. And Nexford does like business programs. For those who might know Nexford, they do MBAs for business and everything. And it's purely online. And so I was like, okay, since I'm working, I want to do something business related. So let me just do this Nexford University. It makes sense. So I applied, I sent certificates and everything, all of the paid admissions fees and everything. And then at this time, on this day, I got this particular email. Now, it's a very long email where they said so many things, but one of the parts of the email, they said, the documents you provided do not merit as an English proficiency certificate. And then they go on to explain that, I have to write an IELTS exam, etc. I have to do this before I can then go into the school. And mind you, all along, I was communicating with them via email in English language, right? So I wasn't using Swahili or any kind of language. It was the same English language that we're communicating in. And so, the question is, what did I send to them? So I sent my NECO results, my WAEC results, just as we always have. I also sent, I'd done the HND program at the International Institute of Journalism at the time. So I also sent that to them, journalism, which of course means you write a lot in English. And I'd done the program at Harvard Kennedy School as well at the time. So this was 2020. So in 2019, I did a 4-month program at Harvard Kennedy School. The program's on leadership, storytelling, and action. So I also sent that to them previously, not like before they even sent that particular email. So like after sending all of those things and they still say I should write an English exam, I personally have had stories about the IELTS and I've personally had a personal beef against it, but I just never like applied for anything that requires it. I ignore anything that requires it, right? So just seeing this and after paying all the fees and everything they're saying, this kind of things, I replied them angrily and just said, just in case you don't have Google, you should know that we're colonized by the British. I said a lot of things, right? And the screenshots of the email trended for quite a while, but I think the most interesting bit of this was that because of how angry and how I replied that particular email, 1 month later, Nexford University then wrote to me to say on Twitter, I was just talking with someone and then they replied to say, since then, we've changed the admissions policy, we made it simpler as the first generation university, etc., just pretty much saying that if people had no English enough to pass their first course at the university, they don't need to then go back to write an IELTS exam that costs $250, and have their results expire every 2 years. So that it was a win, right? It was one win for one university. And I'm sure for those of you who are like my friends on Twitter, it was trending for a while, people were talking about it, it was such an exciting win. They're like, oh yes, Grace won. So almost anyone who applies, everyone really who applies to Nexford now, who wants to opt for that part where they take the first course, they can go and take the first course and not have to write any IELTS. So it made so much sense. There was so much news media about it. But was that really enough? And this is a lesson, right, that I also learned in the process, where at what point do you take the ovation, right? So do you take it here and just, okay, great, Nexford University, the headlines that say, meet Ebenezer Wikina, he made Nexford University change their proficiency policy, bam, and everything ends there, which is not bad. But the problem is way, way bigger than that, right? So from personal observation, I actually found out that the African continent as a whole spends close to $30 million on English proficiency tests every year. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? We had to do a lot of testing and checking and research for this particular thing. And it makes no sense because, like, most of Anglophone Africa, well, not all of Anglophone Africa, was colonized by the British, and England, has English language, and our systems, our government systems, schools, early schools, the missionaries actually came down, forced English down on our people. So most of us, there's probability that most of us learned English first before we learned any other language. So it just doesn't make any sense. Also, if you consider the fact that just like Africa, the Caribbeans, so you have Jamaica, Barbados, etc., they were also colonized by the British. But they don't have to write the IELTS when they apply to schools, when they apply to the UK, whether it's for immigration, etc. And so I just started to think, what makes them different, better than us, right? So, and that's where the whole thing started to form in my mind. I also found out during the period, shockingly, this was during COVID, I had no clue of this just before before the Oxford University thing. I also found out from my grandmother that my great-grandfather, his name was Samson Wikina Ima. He served as a village court interpreter during the colonial era, and he helped the missionary at the time to help translate the Bible, the Holy Bible, from English to the Kana language. Nobody really knows where he learned English from because there's no history of him going to any school abroad or anything like that, but he did a lot of work, just like representing so many people in village courts during the colonial era and helping to do, the Bible, the Kana Bible, because I'm from the Ogoni tribe, the Kana Bible that he helped to translate is still being used today, across Ogoni land, and people still talk about the work that he had done at that time. And I had zero, trust me, I had no clue about any of that. So one of those days during the COVID pandemic, when I heard that story, I was blown away. And it made me to just think about, the issue and the fact that if someone as far back as then was already beginning to see that there's actually, that like if someone could understand English good enough then to work with the colonial masters, think of how good we are currently with the English language and why that particular practice needs to continue over and over and over and over for close to 40 years now. So that's how the movement came about, right? Simple and short. However, at the time, we didn't have an organization. Policy Shapers was founded in August of 2020. The Oxford University thing happened in January, February of 2020. So there was a lot of time before Policy Shapers was founded. So we had so much time to think about it, talk about it. I would often just talk about it on social media, just as Catherine said earlier, tweet about it, talk about it, just keep asking questions, right? And I think that's just from the questions and then the team as Policy Shapers thinking about it, we then thought, what if we actually tried to solve the same thing that was solved with one university at the global scale, and where would that problem come from? Who should we engage and stuff like that? So we started to ask questions that then led to this. So in October of 2021, we formally launched the campaign. It was actually October 1st, it was Independence Day. So we did a meeting together, got people, shared a link online, people joined and had a conversation about it. And that's how the movement was actually born, right? So what are the 10 things that we learned? And I'm sure in these learnings, you will see some of the things that you should do when you have an idea, you have a campaign, you have something you're working on, how you can push this campaign, to become a movement and, have it to become a lot more, have a higher potential to be successful, right? The first thing is to inspire collective action. So stories are actually very powerful, right? I'm sure when I told you the story of Nexport, told you the story of my great-grandfather, it made you start thinking a lot more about, oh, really? So maybe this is why this guy is working on this thing, right? So I found out that just telling those stories, most times, when I had media interviews, when I had conversations about this particular thing, and telling the story of how it doesn't just affect me, but affects everybody else. So if you look at the map on the right, that's the location of countries that don't have to write the English tests. So countries in Europe, of course, Australia, New Zealand, and then I think there are like 9 countries in the Caribbean, right, where you don't have to write the English proficiency test. And there's none in Africa, none in Asia, obviously. So when you tell the stories, talk about the fact that it affects people, talk about the fact that like something needs to be done about it. Somehow you inspire people, right? So from the program I did at Harvard, there's a concept called public narrative, where there are three levels to it: the story of self, the story of us, and story of now. If you've listened to President Obama speak a lot about like his story and share his story, he used that framework a whole lot, because like the lecturer who teaches the framework was one of his teachers. And just sharing your personal story about it might seem like a basic, simple thing, right? But I just think a lot of times just being able to share that story of my experience with Oxford University has inspired many, many, many people, not just to join the movement, but also to, on their own, begin to ask questions as well. So as you see, there are other countries that have joined the Reform My House campaign. So we have campaigners in Ghana, we have campaigners in Malawi, we have campaigners in Kenya, who are currently working much more than even us currently, engaging several institutions just because they've heard these stories, they've heard these things. So I think inspiring collective action comes from being able to tell your story very well. Tell the story, why are you doing this? People want to know why, right? So what made you to do this? When you can tell that story over and over again, it then makes a lot of sense. Second one is to get a deeper understanding. So you can't solve anything that you don't understand, right? And I know at the start of the Reform IELTS campaign, we all just thought that the villain of this whole thing was the British Council, right? So we're just like, the British Council, they're the ones who are doing this test, they are just stealing our money, you know, and everything. So we sort of just thought that was where the problem was from. However, I then saw that there was an opportunity to apply to join the British Council's board. This was the early period of the campaign. So we've not really gone really viral then. We're talking about it online, but we've not really gone viral. So I just thought, let me just apply. Probably they will just say, no, this guy that's fighting us, we should not let him in. You know, so I just applied randomly. I saw it on Twitter, I think. I just applied, and you know, I think in a week or two, I got a response for an interview, did an interview, and then I was accepted to join the board. It was the first time they were doing a youth board for Africa and the UK. And the idea is they want to see how they can improve relations between young people and, you know, racial issues between, you know, people from the UK and people from Africa and the African diaspora. So I just thought this is a wonderful opportunity pretty much to understand the problem. So almost all through the meetings on the British Council board, we always will talk about all of these issues. Every AOB, you know, as the meeting records will show you, every AOB, I was raising this issue, we're asking questions about it. I was always talking about it. I was able to even get the other African board members from East Africa, South Africa, and North Africa to also just like be sold on this issue. And they always often want to raise it and ask questions. And then just from joining the board, I then understood that, oh, okay, British Council really doesn't even have that kind of power, right? They're pretty much just like a service provider on this particular issue. And so the actual problem comes from the UK government, and there's a UK office called the Home Office that has a list of countries that, you know, is a public policy document from the UK government that says these are the countries that are English-speaking countries. And so universities in the UK and then other countries as well take a leaf from the UK saying, if your country is not on this particular UK policy list, you know, you have to write a English proficiency test. And, you know, I look at the list, 18 countries, and there's no African country, like I said earlier, no Asian country, despite all of the colonization and everything that's happening. So I just thought, okay, so it means the problem is not from the British Council. But if I didn't go closer, if I didn't get closer to understand the problem, I wouldn't have been able to figure that out, right? So that's why it's good to understand. So you might not even need to apply to a board. Yours might just be do some more research on the issue. You might think something is a problem, but it might not even be a problem. But you might think a problem is from this particular place, it might be from somewhere else, right? So always do a deeper analysis to be able to understand where the problem is coming from. The third point is to back it up with data. Data is very, very key. This is also very close to understanding your problem. When you're trying to make a case for why, you know, it was a tough thing because we had to say, why should, from an analytical perspective, not just from an emotional, because there's an emotional argument that says, oh, we're British colonies, you know, you colonized us before, so we shouldn't write the test. That's an emotional thing. How do you say it logically? How would it make sense to a policymaker, to someone who's looking at the numbers? What is your argument? You know, so we had to take some time to do a lot of study. And trust me, these studies were Google. It's not like we had anything special. It was Google Scholar. It was Google. It was trying to read linguistic theories. There was nothing special that we had. We didn't have anything special. It was just the same smartphone, the same Google Chrome that everyone has, right? And most of these things you see here, if not all of these things, we're done on Canva. So we didn't even have like graphic design skills. I did most of these things here. And, you know, it's just being willing to understand the problem and then being willing to find the data that will help to strengthen your arguments, right? So if you look at the top left, the data there talks about the poverty rates and then the cost of the English proficiency test in the various African countries, the Anglophone African countries. You know, that was one that also trended for a while. The top right also talks about, so it puts together the cost of English proficiency test and the cost of the DELF, the French proficiency test. And just seeing that particular test costs 16,000 naira, but the result is valid for life. And then the IELTS costs 89,000 naira. Now is a lot more than that. and the result expires in 2 years. So we said, I mean, I'm not even a French speaker, but if I do the DELF and I pass, you know, my result can last for a lifetime. But if I do the IELTS, let's say I've been an English speaker, the result expires in 2 years. Just putting that out there, you know, the thing went viral, people were talking about it, people were upset about it. So I think just having data to back up our arguments was something that actually helped us all through the engagement, because when we eventually got the chance to engage the UK government directly, you know, it was the data that we shared that always made us stand out. Also key to use media. Media is powerful, local, international, every kind of media. The beautiful thing is because of how social media it works, when something trends and something becomes a discussion topic on social media, it's almost naturally would it will most likely seep into traditional media. So to be on a TV bulletin. Arise News has this section called what's trending. Most of them have this what's trending sections. So it's most likely seep into other media platforms. So if you can make sure that it's being discussed online, that's one of the hacks that I found out. You know, it's most likely go to TV. Journalists will most likely contact you to say, oh, they want to hear your thoughts on something. You know, so most likely you get a lot more conversation from that. I can see someone saying they can't see the sign language interpreter. Is that from my end?
Oh, no, that's from their end. We can see. I'm not sure where he can.
Okay. All right. So media is powerful. So like I'll say, use media as much as you can. You also don't need to wait for like an external media to come to you. These days, there are things like Medium, LinkedIn allows you to write articles. So like even beginning to share your own thoughts. And that's how we actually started. Sharing your own thoughts, putting on social media, writing as long as you want to write, doing podcasts, you know, just beginning to put that information out there would actually begin to lead to the conversation so that when it then actually goes viral, you know, media then jumps on it, right? The fifth point is to use influential voices, leverage influential voices, because so influential voices have a large audience, right? And I think a large audience usually would help to push things further. So as a Mandela Washington Fellow in 2021, we got a chance to speak to the vice president during the NSAS, the anniversary of the NSAS. Of course, we went to talk about NSAS. I mean, I was nominated by my cohorts to speak on our behalf. So of course, I spoke about NSAS angrily, maybe very, very fast as I spoke earlier, you know, just saying, you guys are this, you guys are that. You know, and in course of the conversation with the vice president, we also got a chance to talk about other development issues that we thought, you know, affected young people. We talked about education, out of school children, etc. But then we also mentioned Reform IELTS, right? So I mentioned Reform IELTS. I thought it was a good opportunity to hear his thoughts. Mentioned Reform IELTS, and the VP made a video for us, just saying he agrees with us. You know, this is a great thing we should do. You know, he promised that the government will work on it. Promise did not come to pass, sadly. However, just because he mentioned it and we had a video of it, you know, the viral nature was almost insane. So we had, you know, international media, local media again jumping on. So once you have media talking about something over and over and over, it begins to put more pressure on the decision makers that you want to engage, right? So at this point, we have not even had the chance to engage the UK government directly, but because of the media that has started to go out on this, you know, it has started to cause pressures, conversations, and everything. Like, oh, the VP supports this, you know, this particular person supports that, and all of that just led to a lot more pressure. So in our own time, influential voices don't have to be the vice. It could be a skit maker. It could be, you know, skit people have a lot of, like Sabinus and Co. The numbers that they have sometimes are much more than what presidents even have, right? So it could even be a skit. It could be a comedian. It could be an actor. It could be someone who just has like a social media influencer who just has a lot of people listening to them. You know, those kind of people often have a way to get much more information out there. And I think that that's something that we should leverage, because that's one way to make sure more people get to hear about the work that you're doing. This point is making sure that you share, as I mentioned this earlier. So there was a point in the campaign. So this was, I think this was like February, March of 2022. So we then started to have like interest. So we started to build up. We had a change.org petition that went viral. People were signing, sharing, and everything. So there was now increased interest because media has there. I've been doing a lot of media talking and everything. So people were now interested in the particular thing. So one day someone shares a post with me and says, oh, there's this guy that is writing to universities and talking about this whole IELTS thing. You know, can you make a post saying that you don't know him? Some people within the group say, oh, let's dissociate ourselves from him. We don't know who he is. Maybe he has a different agenda. I'm like, guys, like, are we fighting ourselves or are we fighting, you know? So it became a learning moment for us, even within the WhatsApp group, because we had the WhatsApp group for volunteer people who part of the campaign. And we had a conversation to say, like, you know, it's not versus. Don't forget that the enemy, the common enemy in quotes, is actually the fact that we want to change that particular policy. So if we can find various ways to make that change, instead of fighting ourselves, which is what we often see sometimes in the development space, where because people don't want to work together, they end up fighting each other, trying to just like boycott each other to do the same thing, you know. Just work, just collaborate. It's the easiest thing. Work together as opposed to fighting yourself. So that's one of the easiest things that turned out for us, because Scholarship Cafe is owned by, some of you might know him, Dr. Muiwa, who is based in Canada. He's done tremendous work for the campaign, you know, just using his influence as a lecturer in Canada to engage associations, universities, right, to so many universities, you know, with all of us in copy, and we've all just been able to put our efforts together to be able to cause change. So imagine if we went to fight him. We could have lost the value of the campaign. We could have, okay, fighting because what you want to say you're the one that started the campaign. Most of these flimsy things sometimes are the things that make us go off course from our actual goal, right? And I'm stressing on this one because I've seen it happen a couple of times, especially with, you know, movements and things that young people are actually leading. So let's make sure that we don't make that kind of mistake. Let's not forget, let's always remember the focus is to change the particular thing. And one thing people don't even realize is when you share, you're also sharing the risk, because like social activism comes with risk, right? It's like, what if the UK government sends like MI5 or MI6 on the lighter notes to go and attack whoever is doing this particular campaign, right? So, and you want to do that alone. Why? Why do you want to put that kind of pressure on yourself? So when you're able to share, you also share the risk. When you share the ownership, you share the victories, you also share the risk. Everyone is also part of it. So you're not going to be the one that takes the fall alone for everything. But that's on the lighter notes, actually. So don't forget to share, because that's actually very key. This point is on giving attention to details. So this one was actually very key when we then eventually got the chance to engage the UK government. So we had sent an email to them a long time ago, sometime in October of 2021. They didn't respond to us. They didn't acknowledge it. You know, we sent it multiple times, no response, nothing. You know, then the media thing comes on, the petition goes viral, conversations go on, everything just keeps happening, you know, day after day. So they were forced to reply to us in January of 2022, January 26th of 2022. We know that they were forced, and we know that they rushed to do it, because for like 2-3 days nonstop, the UK Home Office, Dear Home Office, Reform IELTS was trending on Twitter for like nonstop. So we know they were forced because they had typos in the email. So like the UK government email from the Home Office had typos. I've never seen that in my life. Even emails from as the lowest places, you know, you never see typos, but they had typos in their email. So again, I mean, that's by the way. What they said in their response is that one of the ways that we can prove that Nigeria should be on that policy document that says that we shouldn't write English proficiency tests is that we should show that at least 51% of our population speaks English. That was straightforward for us. We're just like, oh, is that what you're looking for? Great. So we open a Google Doc. We have like 80 people in our group looking for information, doing research on Google with the policy shapers team. And we wrote a 14 or 15-page policy brief with all of the data, all of the information. I can share this with Catherine so you guys can see. It was all written by young people, right? And of course, we got some of the people in the industry in the social impact space who are already, of course, more established to read and proofread and help us to edit, because again, you can't know it all. So they helped us to edit and proofread. But the initial work was all done by young people like me and you, right? We all came together, put that together, and we shared information saying that this is the policy brief that says that at least 51% of the population speaks English. That's all he asked for. They didn't reply again for like a month, and they reply and now say, oh, our criteria is that more than 51% of the population should speak English. And they were like, oh, hold up. Like, are you guys serious? Like, you first say at least 51%, then you then say more than 51%. You're supposed to know English language. You guys don't even know your language. At least and more than 51% don't mean the same thing, you know. So we go on to them, and then share a lot more information, share some more data. And that's when they now say, okay, we've heard you guys. We've got your information and we're going to work on this. So imagine we're not even paying attention to this. Imagine we were just excited by the fact that we're engaging them and writing emails back and forth. You could have missed out this particular key issue, which was the biggest gap in their whole policy. It just meant that they wrote that list a couple of years ago and just didn't. They did it from like a prejudice stand and just said, oh, these Africans cannot speak English, and just wrote a very crazy list and just didn't have any validation for that list. And so when we began to ask questions, they kept going back and forth just to try to explain why that list was made, and they made so many errors. So paying attention to detail is very key. And it's also why, during the EndSARS campaign, remember that a lot of times there was a 5 for 5, and people kept emphasizing that this is the 5 for 5, because like I said, many other things came up about, changing the government, ending this, ending that, ending bad governance, etc. But people kept stressing that the 5 for 5 is actually the demand for the particular campaign. And so that kind of thoroughness is what you need to ensure that your campaign doesn't go off grid or go mainstream, where people now take it to do so many things that they've been planning to do for a very long time. So paying attention is very key. Taking small wins is also very key. I know that, like, when you have a goal in your mind, something you want to achieve, you can look at it and say, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. I want to do that. We want to change this particular policy. We want the UK government to announce that, Nigeria is now on the list. And we'll all say, yes, we've won. But sometimes, people who have worked in this space will tell you that life doesn't happen like that sometimes. Sometimes it's not a straight line. Sometimes it's round and round in circles, and then later it becomes a straight line. Sometimes it takes a straight line for a long time, then it slows down for another 4 years before you get to the point that you want to get to. So sometimes things might not go the way you want it to go. So I think that when we now start to see that the UK government, despite all we're giving them, because after that conversation about at least and more than 51%, we shared more data from the World Bank. We're able to get information from the World Bank, some young Nigerians who work at the World Bank, people were willing to come up with information, right? That we shared at the UN, and we shared some more data with them. One of the biggest challenges we had was that we've not done a census in almost how many years? It was 2006 as our last census, right? And so when we shared the first form of data, they were like, oh, this census is old, Nigeria had grown by XYZ%. So we then had to look for other secondary data to add up. Anyway, so one of the issues we had was that we shared that information with them, but they were not willing to. So at some point, they stopped responding to us. So it was obvious that we've argued our case, and our case was so strong, but they were not going to respond. And how do you make a foreign government respond? I mean, we've done enough alone to even make sure that they respond to us this far, right? How do you even get them to respond? Because again, we're then trying to get the Nigerian government involved, trying to follow up with the vice president's promise and everything. And the bureaucracy of all of the army of essays and all of those working around them. So we could either have just stayed there and just been demoralized by saying, oh, we've tried this over and over, it didn't work. Or we then think of, okay, how do we take this in a smaller way that then still leads to the larger goal? So we started to work with Dr. Muyiwa, the work he was doing. We got so many more volunteers to work with him, writing emails to several universities. Policyshapers started to engage smaller organizations in the UK, in Australia, in the US, like the Nursing and Midwifery Council, which also has, they also have a list drawn from the UK policy documents, the majority English-speaking country list. And they also do not feel African nurses are good in English. So we also engage them, send them information. And because of our engagements with them, they were forced to launch a consultation on their English language process, and they are working currently to actually change that. And then we started to have universities from Canada, from the US, everywhere started to announce that, okay, we're changing this policy, we're changing that policy. And those small wins now helps us to continue moving forward. Because if we didn't get any win at some point, we might have gotten discouraged that everything had failed, right? Despite all the efforts and despite all that we had done. So I think that it's good to take small wins, because then they help you to feel like something is happening. Number 9 is to build community. Community is very key because, like I talked about sharing the risk. When you have a community around you and around an issue that you're working on, the community helps to take a lot of burden and pressure from you. They act like a shock guard, sort of. You know, so there were times, I know I sound like I'm so into this now, but there were times when, because I have my 9-to-5 job, I have things I was doing. I'm just like, you know what, this country is not serious. We've spoken to the VP, we've done this, we've done that. If they don't want to listen, it's not our fault, you know. So there were days when I was totally discouraged and just felt like, I mean, I beg, I have other things to do, right? But it was a community that someone would post it and say, what are we doing? You know, we've not done anything about XYZ. Why are we not doing XYZ? What's happening? Have we replied to this person? Have we done this thing? So the community in a way will keep you in check and ensure that you're even working towards the particular goal, right? So through our change.org petition, but Bashir, you want to say something?
Sorry to cut you off. I think we left a couple of messages for you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling to go between the chat and okay. All right, thanks. Okay, so I'm actually at the end. So you can use these tools to build community. WhatsApp is very, very easy. I know you guys have a Telegram group for this particular unit. You can use that to be able to build a community, delegate responsibilities to your community, and work together. You know, when you have people that work together with you, it makes things a lot more easier. The final thing, number 10, is that you should be patient. Change takes time. If there's nothing you remember from this entire long sermon that I've given, don't forget that change takes time. Be patient, you know, give it a lot of time, continue to work on it. I've given the examples there. When you get the slides, you can look at them. All of these things, like Not Too Young to Run, NSAS, they all began a while ago, but it took a while for them to snowball into the bigger movement that we're seeing today. So always be patient. When you have the slides, you can look at the wins that we've had. I mentioned these things earlier. The universities now that have changed the policy, and this is the last phase that I think that any social movement wants to be in, where, so before now, we've been the ones trying to engage universities and say, add Nigeria to your list. Now universities are writing to us to say, we've added Nigeria to our list, please can you add us to your own list? You know, and so we've had 2 or 3 universities do the same thing. And we think that when you get to that phase, like I call it like the domino effect phase. And in development, people tell you that when an organization can leave a particular thing, they can exit a particular intervention, and the thing continues to happen, it means that they've been successful. So somehow I think we're almost being successful when we can leave and universities on their own can begin to make that change without us even being there. All right. Thank you. So sorry, sorry for taking extra time, but I hope that this was useful to you. And I hope that, you know, we will not be scared as young people to lead change, because our country relies on us, and I hope we'll go out tomorrow to achieve it. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Please, in the chat box, let us appreciate Mr. Ebenezer. It's good to see you. I was really excited about this session because, you know, I follow you on LinkedIn and I see all the accomplishments, all the things that you've done as well. So it's good to hear from you. So we just have a couple of questions that came up during your session, and I'll just take a few of those as well. And just to mention, we also had people joining in on YouTube as well. So as if one of those questions comes in, I'll just pass it. Sure. We have, would you like me to take 2 of those questions or take one of them?
Sure. As much as your time permits.
Okay, so one question is, what's the best strategy or tactic in achieving success with social movement, especially in a time like this? And then I'll take the second question. Second question is on the NSAS MOOC campaign. From your view, can you state why the movement was hijacked, and can you say NSAS was a success?
Okay, so first question was I think it's all of those tactics that I shared, but I think in a time like this, just seeing that one of the things we saw with Reform IELTS was that we couldn't physically go with placards to actually go to embassy and block embassy and say you must do this, because I mean NSAS has just happened. There has just been the shooting. We know people will not want to come out. So we did our best to leverage technology a lot. So making sure that we stay using digital campaign tools, social media, you know, petitions, anything that will just make people to share their thoughts online. We did that and mobilized people a lot more online than actually physically. And it showed that it's possible to still do that online and also achieve change. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't, there are times when you actually do need a physical thing, because there are some issues that actually need that pressing physical presence. But in a time like this, because of how the country is and the challenges we had with protests and those kind of repressive actions from people in power, I would say leverage a lot more on digital campaigning. Change.org has a wonderful platform that you can use. At Policy Shapers, we're also trying to see how we can teach people how to do digital campaigning skills as well, and do that. So for NSAS, I would say NSAS was unique because I feel like it was the first time thing, and we made quite a number of mistakes as young people, but we also did a lot of things correctly. Some mistakes we made was to say, oh, we won't take any advice. There were people who had done student union movements, far back in the military era, who were saying, oh, I think you guys should do this. And we kept saying, no, we don't want any leader. We don't want, in some way, you can't even blame people because you've had the experience of saying that, people have been co-opted before who were supposed to represent us. So there's so many things. There's so many things. But in my opinion, I think NSAS was a success because it led to the civic awakening, young people. So when you see the increase in number of voters, 40 million young people with PVCs, 26 million students, it shows you that there was something that quickened in them because these young people have been there for a while, right? They were not born between 2015 and 2023. They were always there, but they actually didn't care. But I think NSAS helped to quicken that, and that led to all of that, engagement we've seen now with the elections and post-elections. And I hope we can keep it going post-elections because to actually change something, like I said earlier, change takes time. So we actually need to keep the conversation going and keep demanding for the right things to be done. So NSAS was a success in my opinion.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I think some of the questions we do have here some other questions are more specific to Reform IELTS. And I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just prompt people to maybe follow you on LinkedIn. So if you can share your LinkedIn, your social media handles, because I believe on following you, some of those information, I see you dishing out those infos on.
So I'll just share my LinkedIn profile link just so people can follow.
And also, we have a question from YouTube here. And it says, does signing a petition really have an effect? I'd appreciate it if more light can be shed on how petition signing works. Are you able to? Okay,
so I shared my LinkedIn link. Yes, but I mean, not because I work at Change.org, because I actually did start using using Change.org a long time ago before I started working at the organization. Petitions work a lot more abroad because there's law, for example, in the UK, there's law that if a petition can hit 10,000 signatures, the government is forced to respond. 100,000 signatures, the parliament is forced to discuss it on national TV. So there are laws in those kind of places. I feel like we're going to get there soon in Nigeria, hopefully, especially as our parliament becomes a lot more democratic. But what currently happens is what you do with petitions now is that it helps you to mobilize people. So our own campaign on Reform IELTS had 80,000 signatures. I think it has 85,000 now. What that means is that it's not just one organization that cares about this, but if you're engaging someone, you can say 85,000 other people also care about the same issue, right? So you're demonstrating that you're able to mobilize people around a particular issue. Also, when petitions begin to trend, media gets involved. So that's how we got our own media pensions, all of the invitations from channels or Arise to come and talk about the issue. It was because the petition started to trend and people were signing and sharing. So it created greater awareness, sort of. So it gave us, so it didn't force the government to respond to us, but it gave us a platform to be able to engage the government because people were now listening to us because of how far the thing was going. But I'm hopeful that a time will come in Nigeria where citizens can have issues, have petitions, and petition their House of Rep member, Senate member, and people will actually listen and be forced to discuss those issues. But I think for now, what we do is mostly around mobilization and awareness. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ebenezer. And congratulations on all the success of the Reform IELTS and all that you do. Changemakers here have taken a lot of gems away from you. And I think one thing that spoke to me was when you even spoke about patience, because change does not happen in one day. You said be patient and stay the course. I think one thing that we have a lot of people that are not patient, and change takes a lot of time. I would just like to say, please, we have polls for participants. Please engage. on there. But I also like to thank Mr. Ebenezer for your time today. Thank you so much. And I also know towards the end of the last question, you had encouraged people to go out and also vote during these elections. I know at the beginning there are lots of people who are not as scared or anxious. But thank you for your kind words. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. And some people are asking for your Twitter as well.
Yes, I've shared the link to the Twitter as well. I shared Twitter and LinkedIn.
All right, so thank you so much for your time. We don't want to keep you for any longer, and
thank you for having me. Yes, and please continue to do the great work, LEAP. I've been a beneficiary of LEAP Africa's programs. I'm a fellow. I'm an NESG Bridge Fellow, and that's a collaboration between LEAP Africa and the NESG. And so LEAP Africa is a great organization. So please continue to do the great work. You're building the future of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time and have a wonderful evening and enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, change makers. I will then Tawa, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon, Tawa.
Hi, Bashir. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, sorry. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Paul Jesudun Odede, and I'm also one of the course administrators. Thank you so much, Bashir, for moderating that section. Okay, so before we drop off the call, I'd just like to take us through some important information. But before I do that, I'd like to ask you all to please engage with the poll. The polls will go up very soon again, so please engage with the poll. All right, so first of all, well done, change makers, on getting to week 2 of the modules. I know that as you're well aware, the modules are also they are released every week. The modules are released every week, and you can please you have access to the modules on your dashboard. Right, so please log into your account, check your dashboard, and you will see the modules for the week. So please take your time to take the modules. Now, please note that only participants who complete the modules, all the modules, will qualify for the next stage of the program. So please do well to complete your modules, right? And if you have any issues, any challenges, please send us an email at ylp@leapafrica.org. We will attend to all the issues there. There's also the issue of data stipend. A couple of people have been asking, I don't have data, please give us data, this and that about data. So LEAP Africa is going to give data stipend to participants who complete this. So you want to do well to actually finish all your modules so that you can get your data stipend at the end of the virtual course component. Another thing is the group formation and the participants grouping into teams, right? So I've been seeing some messages on Telegram asking, all right, thank you, Catherine. Yes, the polls are back up, so please engage with the polls before you drop off. Thank you. I've been seeing some questions and people saying, oh, I'm in Bayelsa, can I join a group in Lagos? Or if you're in the Southwest or even in the Southeast, please join this group. And now, I'd just like to tell you that we are going to do that for you. Emails have started going out and we're already putting people into groups. We're sharing lists of persons in your institution with you, right? So the reason we're grouping according to institution is so that your change project implementation is smooth. You don't want to be in Bayelsa and deschooling in Bayelsa and join a group in Lagos State. So when it's time for your change project implementation, you have to travel down. We just want the process to be smooth for you. So please do not create groups according to geographical regions, right? Don't say, oh, if you're in the Southeast or if you're in Kano, join here. You don't create groups according to geographical regions. You don't create groups according to your interest and say, oh, I'm in Kaduna, but I'm interested in a group in Abuja. No, that's not how it works, right? You also don't create groups according to your state or your location or your program. No, please create your group. We will send you the email for group creation of formation. All right. So please always check your emails. We have shared the program guide. Please do well to read the program guide. It has a lot of information for you. So please do well to read the program guide. Stay tuned for week 3's modules. The modules will be uploaded and you'll be able to have access to them on your dashboard. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. I think that brings us to the end of the session. Thank you so much for joining today's session. I look forward to engaging with you on Telegram and via emails. All right, thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you, Bashir, for moderating. All right, my name is Towo Jesudun Odede. All right, and thank you so much. We will share more information about the next live review session with you on Telegram and via email as well. Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you, everyone, and bye. Have a good weekend. And please go out and vote as well. Thank you so much to the whole team, to Joy, to Bashir, to Catherine, to IT.